Alabama's cities are crumbling from the inside. Not from crime or politics, but from a homelessness crisis worse than you think. Entire downtowns are hollowing out, families are vanishing into tent camps, and the numbers are skyrocketing in 2025. But the real question is, if homelessness is destroying the very heart of Alabama, what will it take to save it before it's too late? In 2025, more than 650,000 people in America sleep without a home on any given night, the highest number ever recorded in this country. And Alabama has been hit harder than most places. Walk through downtown Birmingham, and you can see the signs with your own eyes. Storefronts that once sold clothes or served food are now dark and empty. Shattered glass glitters on sidewalks, and cardboard beds lie tucked against the shadows of old brick walls. In Montgomery, the courthouse square still fills with traffic during the day, but just a few blocks away, tents gather under the wide arms of Interstate 65, blue tarps flapping in the hot wind that comes off the pavement. These are not just passing figures, not just nameless shapes. They are people, families, workers who once had homes but now live under bridges and beside rail lines. The scale of the problem is staggering when you stop to measure it. Alabama has more than 6,500 homeless people right now. That number may sound small compared to giant states like California, but when you compare it to the state's population, the growth is faster here than in many southern states. Shelter space is nowhere near enough. Statewide, there are fewer than 1,500 beds available on a given night, leaving thousands outside in the heat of summer or the cold, damp nights of winter. One man in Birmingham, his face drawn and weathered, said quietly, "I had a job at the plant for 20 years. When it shut down, I tried to keep paying rent. Then one month I was behind, and the next month I was out. Just like that, gone." His story is not rare. The loss of steady work, the rising cost of rent, and the creeping spread of drug use have tied together like heavy ropes around entire neighborhoods. When you look at the roots of this crisis, the picture sharpens even more. Alabama has suffered from the closure of mills, plants, and small factories that once gave thousands steady jobs. In rural towns, a closed plant means dozens of families with no income. Add to that the high cost of healthcare, and the steady rise in rent even in small towns, and the slide toward homelessness becomes swift. The opioid crisis has cut deeply here too. In Jefferson County alone, overdoses rose by more than 20% last year, leaving many children without parents and many workers without stable health. Unlike cities such as Austin or Atlanta, which have tried bold housing-first programs, Alabama lags behind. Here, the problem is left to stretch and grow while services try to catch up. Families find themselves in shelters for a night, then back outside again. A young mother in Huntsville, holding her toddler close, said, "I work 2 jobs, but it's not enough." The shelter said they were full. Where are we supposed to go? The crisis is both wide and deep, and it leaves scars on every level of community life. As you step into the streets of Montgomery or Mobile, the issue is not just seen but felt. The heavy smell of damp cardboard mixes with the hum of cars overhead. People walk past with quick eyes, used to the sight of tents along the sidewalks. Homelessness has become part of the city's daily scene, but normalizing it hides the truth of its impact. Alabama's people are among the poorest in the nation, with median incomes far below the U.S. average. That means a family here is just one medical bill, or one late rent payment away from losing their home. Stigma makes it worse. In a culture that prizes self-reliance, asking for help can feel like shame. Many say they would rather stay hidden than step forward to admit they need support. That silence allows the problem to grow stronger. In Birmingham, encampments form in predictable patterns, close to the interstates that cut across the city, under the steel bridges that rumble with trucks all night. In Mobile, families cluster near old shipyards, or beside drainage ditches where grass grows high. In Montgomery, whole rows of tents stand near abandoned warehouses, and locals pass by as though the tents are as permanent as streetlights. The truth is that people adjust to what they see every day, and that acceptance hides the deeper danger. Children growing up in these settings learn to treat it as normal, and that makes the problem harder to fight. Economic strain is only part of the story. Access to help is scarce. With only a handful of clinics, most located in bigger cities, many rural homeless residents are left without any medical or mental health support. Shelters, already too few, often turn people away. A mother of 3 in Huntsville described being told there was no room. She had been working nights at a diner and mornings cleaning offices, but the money still fell short of rent. "I never thought this would be us," she whispered. But where do you go when there's nowhere left? This lack of services builds a dangerous web. People without shelter face heat in the summer, storms that tear through the south, and winters that can still freeze a man's hands stiff by morning. With no safe place, they risk sickness, injury, or worse. Others turn to short-term coping methods, drugs, alcohol, theft, only to be pulled further into the cycle. The stigma grows, the services shrink, and the crisis tightens its grip. Look closer and you see how the web stretches beyond the individual. Cities begin to hollow out. Shops close because foot traffic drops. Schools lose students when families move into shelters or disappear altogether. Hospitals strain under the weight of untreated illnesses that spill into emergency rooms. Every level of community life bends under this pressure. Yet even as the problem deepens, voices often stay unheard. That silence is dangerous, for it suggests a quiet acceptance of a growing wound. You may see tents under bridges in your own city. You may pass by men and women holding signs at intersections. The question is, do we see them as part of the scenery, or as part of our shared human family? Alabama's crisis is not an isolated one. It is tied to jobs, to health, to the very fabric of what it means to belong to a city. And if the web of homelessness is allowed to spread unchecked, it will not just capture the most vulnerable, but the entire community that surrounds them. The story of homelessness in Alabama does not stand alone. It is tied to a web of connections that reach into every part of life, shaping how people live, how they work, and how they survive. Walk through the heart of Montgomery on a hot summer afternoon, and you can feel it. The air is thick and heavy, pressing down on people who sit in the shade of bridges. Cars roar overhead, while the smell of hot asphalt mixes with the sharp scent of sweat. These are not just random places where people gather. The patterns repeat in city after city, showing how location shapes survival. In Birmingham, long rows of tents line the edges of Interstate 20, where the roar of traffic never stops. The bridges above offer shade during the day, and shelter from rain at night. In Mobile, people cluster near the shipyards and drainage ditches, places no one else wants, because they can stay out of sight. It is not only about where people end up, but also why they are drawn to these places. The web is made of need, chance, and survival. Environmental forces weigh heavily here. Alabama summers often rise above 95 degrees, with heat indexes climbing past 105. For people living outside, that means hours of burning sun with no relief. Skin blisters, lips crack, and water becomes more precious than food. Storms add another danger. Gulf hurricanes push winds and rains through the southern part of the state, flooding camps, tearing apart tents, and sweeping away what little people own. Winter brings its own punishment. Nights can drop below freezing in Huntsville or Birmingham, leaving men and women to shiver in thin blankets or huddle around small fires. The land itself tests them, and with no safe shelter, the risk is constant. The crisis has become so common that many locals walk past without even turning their heads. In Montgomery, families push strollers down Commerce Street, while only blocks away people sleep on the sidewalk wrapped in old quilts. A man sells bottled water on the corner, while just a few steps behind him, a woman rests against a concrete wall with her belongings in plastic bags. For many, these scenes blend into the backdrop of the city. Children see tents under bridges so often they stop asking what they mean. This normalization is dangerous. It teaches entire communities to accept suffering as normal, making change harder to imagine. Why are people in Alabama especially vulnerable? The first reason lies in the economy. The state's median household income is far below the national average, which means that even small increases in rent can push families over the edge. A two-bedroom apartment in Birmingham now costs more than $900 a month, but wages for many jobs hover near the minimum. A worker earning the state's minimum wage would have to work nearly 90 hours a week to afford such rent without spending more than a third of their pay. That math makes stability almost impossible. Families live paycheck to paycheck, one broken car or hospital bill away from the street. But money is not the only barrier. There is also stigma. Alabama's culture prizes self-reliance, and asking for help can carry a heavy shame. Many who lose their homes feel judged not only by strangers, but by family. A man in Mobile said, "People tell me I just didn't try hard enough. They don't see that I worked until my back gave out. They don't see that the rent took every dollar." This sense of shame drives many to hide their struggle, rather than seek aid, leaving them more alone. Churches and charities often provide meals, but food is not the same as a path out of homelessness. The lack of access to services deepens the trap. Across the whole state, there are fewer than 1,500 shelter beds, while more than 6,000 people are in need. That means most have nowhere to go but the streets. Mental health care is also scarce. In rural counties, clinics are hours away by car, and without an address or transportation, many cannot reach them. Those who suffer from depression, trauma, or addiction are left untreated, making it harder to find or keep work. A young mother in Huntsville described the struggle. "I was told the shelter was full. I had 2 kids with me, both under 5. I worked 2 jobs, but I still couldn't keep up with rent. When they turned us away, I didn't know where to go. I sat in the car all night with the kids crying, and I felt like I failed them." Her voice cracked, and tears ran down her face, but her story is shared by many others across the state. Coping mechanisms often turn dangerous. Some people use drugs or alcohol to numb the pain of sleeping in the open. Others turn to theft to survive. A few sell what little they have, sometimes even their bodies, to pay for shelter or food. Each choice brings more risk, more stigma, and more trouble with the law. When someone is arrested for petty crime or loitering, they often lose the few possessions they had, including IDs or medical papers, making it harder to get help later. The cycle tightens, and the web of struggle grows stronger. Every detail of this crisis connects back to the larger system. The economy squeezes families, the culture punishes them for seeking help, the services are too few, and the environment exposes them to daily danger. Together, these threads weave a trap that pulls more people inside. It is not just about those sleeping in tents today, but about those who may join them tomorrow. One lost job, one medical bill, one storm that tears a roof from a house, and another family is caught. The question is not only why Alabama is suffering more, but how long the web will grow before it spreads beyond control. The trap of homelessness in Alabama does not just happen once and end. It repeats itself again and again, pulling people deeper every time they try to climb out. The cycle is cruel and steady, like a wheel turning in the same circle with no way to stop. It begins with the smallest fall, often something that seems like it could be fixed. A job loss, a broken car, a missed rent payment. But when a person loses their home, the struggle grows heavier. Without an address, applying for work becomes almost impossible. Without work, money runs out. Without money, there is no chance to pay deposits or rent. Soon the person is caught in a loop, each problem feeding the next. On the streets of Birmingham, the sound of sirens cuts through the night air. Police lights flash under the overpasses where tents line the concrete walls. Officers walk from one camp to another, telling people to move. The city has passed laws against camping, and every sweep pushes people away from the only shelter they know. When tents are taken, so are the few belongings inside. Identification cards, birth certificates, and medication bottles are often lost forever. A veteran in Montgomery said softly, "They took everything that proved who I was. Without those papers, I can't even apply for VA benefits. I can't get my medicine. They erased me. His words carry the weight of a life pushed further into the shadows by rules meant to clean the streets. Each sweep may make downtown look better for a short time, but it leaves the people themselves even weaker and less able to recover. Mental health struggles worsen the cycle. Many on the streets already carry trauma from childhood or from war or from years of poverty. Without stable shelter, nights are filled with fear of theft, assault, or arrest. Sleep is broken, bodies weaken, and minds fray. Depression grows heavier. Some try to ease the pain with drugs or alcohol, but that relief only lasts minutes before pulling them deeper. The next day they are judged as addicts rather than as people in pain, which makes it even harder to find help. Without clinics nearby, and without the paperwork needed to qualify for aid, they spiral downward. Children suffer most quietly in this cycle. In Montgomery, a teacher describes students who disappear mid-year, their families forced to move into shelters or cars. The children lose not only their homes but their schools, their friends, and the chance for steady learning. Studies show that kids who grow up without stable housing are more likely to face the same problem as adults. A 10-year-old who spends a year in a shelter is at higher risk of being a homeless adult in 20 years. This is how the cycle stretches across generations, planting seeds of struggle that grow into the future. The cycle also ties closely to the law. A man sleeping on a sidewalk may be fined for trespassing. Without money, the fine goes unpaid. An unpaid fine turns into an arrest warrant. An arrest brings a record. A record means most landlords will never rent to him again. One night on a sidewalk can lead to years of closed doors. In Birmingham, many people carry stacks of unpaid tickets in plastic bags, unable to pay them, unable to erase them, trapped by paper that grows heavier with time. The ripple effect spread further. A woman in Mobile who once had stable housing fell into addiction after losing her job. Arrested for shoplifting food, she spent 6 months in jail. When she got out, she had no job, no home, and no chance to rent with a record. She said, "I wanted to change, but no one would even give me a key." Her story shows how punishment can push someone deeper into the very life it meant to stop. While Alabama struggles, other states have tried different paths. In Houston, a housing-first model gave people homes before anything else, and homelessness dropped by more than half in 10 years. Utah also saw strong results with similar programs. These places learned that stability in housing allows people to rebuild work, health, and community. Alabama has not made that same shift. Here, services are scattered, underfunded, and often competing with each other. Small charities work hard, but without unity, their efforts are like buckets catching drops from a storm. The storm keeps falling faster than the buckets can fill. This broken system does not only fail the homeless, it weighs down the entire community. Hospitals in Birmingham report rising costs for emergency care, much of it tied to untreated illnesses on the streets. Police departments spend countless hours enforcing camping bans and moving camps, time that could be spent on other needs. Taxpayers bear the cost of jails filling with men and women whose only crime is having no home. Businesses lose customers when streets feel unsafe, and property values fall in neighborhoods marked by decay. The cycle is not just personal, it is civic, pulling down entire cities with it. In Huntsville, a small group of volunteers tried to build tiny homes for people who had nowhere else to go. The effort helped a few, but the need was so much larger than the project could meet. The contrast is sharp. On one side of the cycle, a man works 2 jobs but still cannot afford rent. On the other side, the system designed to help him creates more barriers. Instead of a ladder up, he finds walls. The cycle of homelessness in Alabama is not only cruel but self-feeding. Every lost ID makes it harder to get services. Every night on the street makes it harder to find work. Every arrest makes it harder to find housing. Each step that should lead out instead turns back in. And as long as the system treats symptoms without addressing the root, the wheel will keep turning. The streets of Birmingham, Montgomery, and Mobile echo with this truth. The question is not whether the cycle exists, it is how long communities will allow it to spin before they decide to break it. But the story of homelessness in Alabama does not end only in despair. Even in the middle of broken sidewalks and crumbling neighborhoods, there are signs of hope that shine like small lights in the dark. In Birmingham, A pilot project called Pathways Home has begun to test a housing-first approach. Instead of making people prove they are ready for housing, the program gives them a roof first, then offers health care, counseling, and job help. The buildings are simple but sturdy, small apartments with clean kitchens and working locks on the doors. For people who have spent years in tents or shelters, the quiet of a door that closes is powerful. One man who had been living under Interstate 20 said, "The first night I slept here, I didn't wake up once. I felt safe for the first time in years." His story is not yet common, but it shows what is possible when the order of care is reversed. In Montgomery, mobile health units drive slowly through neighborhoods where tents and cars hold families with no homes. The vans are painted bright blue, marked with the words "Health on Wheels." Inside, volunteer doctors and nurses treat wounds, give out medicine, and connect people with mental health care. A mother holding her daughter said, "They came to us, we didn't have to beg for a ride. We didn't have to wait in line for hours." The idea is simple but life-saving. If people cannot reach clinics, the clinics must reach the people. Huntsville has seen neighbors come together to build a small community of tiny homes. Each unit is less than 300 square feet, but it has electricity, heat, and water. Volunteers built porches with wide steps so people can sit outside and talk. The homes stand close together, forming a circle that feels safe. A woman who moved into one of the homes after living in her car for 2 years said, "It's not much to some, but to me it's everything. I have a key. I have a place to rest." These projects are still small, helping only dozens when thousands are in need. Yet they reveal a path forward. When compared to larger models in other states, Alabama's programs seem tiny, but their impact is real. Houston reduced homelessness by more than half in a decade by using a housing-first approach, bringing together government, charities, and landlords in one unified effort. Utah saw success when it gave permanent housing before requiring treatment. California, despite its struggles, has begun medical respite programs where homeless patients leaving hospitals can recover in safe housing instead of going back to the streets. These examples show that the crisis can be faced, but only when cities choose full and united action. The question rises, if it can work elsewhere, why not in Alabama? The answer is not simple, but it begins with treating homelessness as more than just a housing problem. A roof is the start, but people also need health care, mental health treatment, addiction recovery, job training, and support for children. Without these, the cycle returns. A man may find a room, but if his depression goes untreated, he may lose it again. A mother may gain an apartment, but if she has no safe daycare for her children, she may still lose her job. Solutions must be whole, touching every part of life. Personal stories bring this truth into focus. In Mobile, a woman once trapped in addiction was given a room through a small nonprofit. Along with the room, she was offered therapy, job training, and help reconnecting with her family. She said, "It took one person believing in me, that gave me the chance to believe in myself again." Now she works in a local diner, pays her own rent, and helps mentor other women facing the same path she once walked. Her journey shows how much change can grow from one chance, but it also shows how rare that chance is in Alabama today. The future of Alabama's cities depends on whether these small sparks can grow into something greater. Imagine Birmingham with full housing-first programs, Montgomery with mobile health units on every major street, Mobile with safe tiny home villages that welcome families instead of leaving them on the roadside. These are not dreams too far to reach. They are models already tested in other states. They only require the will, the funding, and the unity to bring them here. The choice stands at a turning point. If the state continues to treat homelessness as a side issue, the cycle will keep spinning. Downtowns will hollow out further, businesses will close, and children will grow up thinking tents under bridges are part of the city. But if Alabama embraces solutions that match the scale of the crisis, it can begin to break the pattern. That means joining housing with health care, linking job training with addiction recovery, and treating people not as problems but as neighbors. As the sun sets over Montgomery, light falls across the courthouse dome, and shadows stretch over the empty streets where tents wait under bridges. But in that same city, a van pulls up to a cluster of families and opens its doors, offering water, medicine, and hope. The contrast is sharp. but it shows that change is possible. One path leads to silence and decay. The other leads to safety and dignity. The question that remains is not whether Alabama can break the cycle, but whether it will. The time to choose is now. The problem is complex and deep, but the answers are within reach. Homelessness is not a puzzle too large to solve. It is a challenge that requires hearts, hands, and policies to work together. Alabama's cities do not have to die from the inside. They can live again, stronger and safer, if people come together to face the truth. The call is simple but urgent. Share this story, start the conversation, and ask yourself, what can we build in our own communities to give every neighbor not just a roof but a future?